Welcome back to Lesson 17 of the Napoleon Hill 17 Universal Principles of Success. And on this momentous lesson, we will be discussing and uncovering in great depth Napoleon Hill's Lesson 17, entitled Cosmic Habitforce. Having successfully applied these principles in their careers, our distinguished guests will be sharing their own diverse stories, experiences, and insights as it relates to this powerful lesson. On this program, we have a power trio who really know and understand firsthand the enormous power that comes with implementing this principle of cosmic habit force. So before we enter this tremendous session together, on behalf of the Napoleon Hill Foundation, it's our great pleasure and honor of introducing our dynamic panel of guests. And they are Judy A. Williamson, Dr. Ivan Meisner, and Shane Moran. Judy Williamson is the Educational Director for the Napoleon Hill Foundation World Learning Center at Purdue University. She's also a prolific author, as well as the author of the Napoleon Hill Yesterday and Today Eason, with a readership of over 50,000 weekly worldwide. She conducts training seminars and workshops locally, nationally, and internationally. Judy was 6 years old when she was first introduced to Napoleon Hill via the Channel 9 WGN series that she was watching with her parents. Next, she heard about Think and Grow Rich while she was in high school and knew at that time that it was a classic work of motivational literature. In her 40s, she was introduced to the works of Napoleon Hill in greater depth by her mentor, Dr. George Selfer. Dr. Selfer convinced her to take the entire course 3 times from him. He told his wife that he was mentoring Judy because he saw that she would be able to carry the teachings further. And yes, indeed, in the fall of 1990, she did exactly that, becoming the director of the Napoleon Hill World Learning Center, and has devoted her life to teaching his principles ever since. And joining Judy Williamson is Dr. Ivan Meisner, who is the founder and chairman of BNI, the world's largest business networking organization. BNI was founded in 1985. The organization has over 6,300 chapters throughout every populated continent in the world. Last year alone, BNI generated 7.1 million referrals, resulting in almost $3.3 billion worth of business for its members. Ivan is also the founder of BNI Meisner Charitable Foundation and was recently named Humanitarian of the Year by the Red Cross. He's married and lives with his wonderful wife Elizabeth and 3 children in Claremont, California. Now, when Ivan speaks, business owners, you listen, and this is what Ivan says about Napoleon Hill. Every entrepreneur should read Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich, for it is the foundation for success in both business and life. Ivan admits that Napoleon Hill was way ahead of his time. And thirdly, and equally joining Ivan and Judy, is Shane Moran, and Shane understands goal achieving and success. He's been an enthusiastic student of the Napoleon Hill principles ever since he was 19 years old. He became the vice president of sales and marketing for a major printing firm in Ottawa, Canada. At the age of 25, he assisted and helped streamline the launching of the world's first North American television network dedicated to success. In 2008, Shane teamed up with visionary Bernie Chua and co-founded Organo Gold International, the healthier coffee company, which has since become the fastest-growing direct sales company in the world. Shane is the co-author of the Napoleon Hill's Path to Riches and wrote the preface to Organo's Gold Collector's Edition of the classic book, Think and Grow Rich. So with that said, welcome everyone to the lesson on Cosmic Habit Force.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us, Phil.
Phil. Yeah.
It's great to have you all, and to think of all 3 of you and the tremendous international impact you've had is just mind-blowing in each of your own unique way. Well, let's just begin with the first question, and since it's customary to go with ladies first, let's start with you, Judy. And let's start with the question, what is Cosmic Habit Force exactly, and what does it mean to you?
Well, Napoleon Hill says cosmic habit force is the comptroller of the universe. In other words, it's the mechanism by which the universe operates. And it's the last principle that Napoleon Hill added to the system, the science of success, because I think many people during the time that he was writing might have thought it was too new age-ish, or he might have felt that he would scare people off. But to me, it's the principle that is the overriding presence that unifies all the other principles. When you think about it, we control our thoughts, we control control our habits that are the results of our thoughts, and by our habits we create our destiny. And it's just perfect. It makes perfect sense when you study it in depth. And watching people like Ivan and Shane, and working very closely with Shane in many of our projects together, I can see it in action, and I know they can too. So I just want to reiterate what Napoleon Hill said. It's the mechanism that runs the universe. It's the mainspring of the universe.
Wonderful. Spoken like somebody who's been teaching this for 14 years every day.
Longer than that, Phil. Now, come on. No, I taught it before I was the educational director.
True.
I like to teach it even more than I am now. But
Wonderfully said. Ivan, would you like to give us your perspective? You've written a whole book on creating habits.
Yeah, I think the description we just heard is outstanding. The only thing I would add to it is the Habitforce has both a positive and a negative potential application, according to Napoleon Hill. And the negative application is, in some ways, very easy to happen if you don't have a plan and a strategy to apply it, because people tend to fix their thoughts on things that have happened to them as opposed to where they want to go. And so the bottom line is that if you don't have a plan, it's going to apply to your life anyway, but it'll probably apply in a negative way.
well stated.
Yeah, and it really speaks to the importance of having that definite chief aim plan that Napoleon Hill incorporates in this whole lesson. Shane, love to hear your perspective on this.
Well, yeah, I'd like to just give you an example maybe of how I view this topic. Of course, I'm a student, and I always will be, I guess. Every time I read the book, I find new pages that weren't there the last time I read it, but everything in nature, for example, grows, and the law applies. This is a universal habit. And, for example, in the soil, you've got a predetermined pattern. For example, vegetables and flowers and trees and fruits, they grow of its own specific and predetermined pattern. So if you're growing a carrot, it's always going to grow into a carrot. It's not going to grow into a tree or a flower. And that's cosmic habit force, basically. The pattern is the same with different chemical reactions, like H2O will always be water, because that's, again, the law of cosmic habit force. But the best description that I could give to maybe a listener that's how do I relate this into their life as it relates to success is that success is not an accident. You know, a lot of people will think, or maybe they're taught, that success is an accident, that people get lucky, that things happen by luck unless you win the lottery. But saying success or successful people are lucky is probably one of the biggest lies that we're ever told. It's not a lottery ticket. So the cosmic habit force is the law that says that the universe has specific patterns, and we can apply those patterns to our own lives. And so when the human mind is focused, for example, on the definite major purpose, which is the first lesson, the law of cosmic habit force goes into action like immediately, and it starts attracting the individual. It starts attracting the person to the equivalent of what that person is focused on. And I agree exactly with what Ivan says. It works both ways, not just in the positive. So successful people are always focused on positive, but you'll often find people that always talk about not having enough money, for example. They talk about not having enough money. They talked about it last year. They're talking about it right now, and they'll be talking about it next year. But they're focused on not having enough, not having enough, not having enough. And guess what shows up, Phil? Not having enough.
Not having enough.
Successful people, on the other hand, tend to focus their mind on the vision of what they want to have happen. They talk about things that maybe not here right now, but they'll talk about where they're going in a year from now. They'll talk about what's happening a month from now or 6 months from now. And just by focusing their energy, you apply the law of cosmic habit force.
Fabulous. How has the incorporation of cosmic habit force contributed to the enormous success that you've achieved? And Ivan, maybe we can go to you. What are some of those habits that you discovered and nurtured that really attributed to your success in building B&I, for instance?
For me, to a very large extent, it's systems, and applying the systems consistently. I've always felt that it's best to do 6 things 1,000 times instead of 1,000 things 6 times.
Right.
And if you can have systems and then leverage your effort by teaching other people's systems, those same systems, and everybody being on the same page, rowing in the same direction with the same purpose, that you're going to achieve a higher level of success. And that's really been my focus. B&I, we now have 6,300 groups in 50 countries around the world, so we literally have 6,300 meetings a week. Well, if you don't have a system and you don't teach people the system, it would be total chaos, especially if you're talking about entrepreneurs, because it's like herding cats. So you got to have a system, you got to apply it, and you got to be consistent. And if you don't, then that's where you default to the negative, like I was saying before.
But I think in the individual personality, though, too, we can not only build systems for organizations, we can build systems for ourselves, because our ultimate goal in our life, our definite major purpose, might be different than being an entrepreneur. It might be something spiritual or emotional or some other type of recognition. And I think as we look at these systems, like self-discipline, pleasing personality, having and holding applied faith, we become that personality that attracts the good habits, and we reinforce those in ourselves, because we're a little microcosm of the universe, and we can create what we need to make us whole, as well as you can create your system's integrity. And so I think that's kind of interesting. You can see it in a microcosm in an individual and a macrocosm in organizations like yours and like Shane's.
Tremendous perspective. And Shane, in your business, what have you done habitually that has made that difference in growing your business?
I think a lot has to do with the vision of starting from scratch, starting from zero, starting from not having enough, not having a product, not having a system, not having any of that stuff, but starting to piece it together with a definiteness of purpose, with an overriding objective that you would start off with that might be really, really general, and then start to hone down. But to me, it's always about the vision. It's always about seeing something that's not there before it's there. So, for example, in June of 2008, June 12, 2008, we had our first little presentation, 30 people in the room. And in the first presentation, with no product, no leaders, no offices, no warehouses, just an idea, just a vision, we painted the picture that we'd fill arenas with people once we put everything together, of course. And most people thought, well, this guy's got to be crazy thinking like that. Like, they don't even have anything, right? But we kept on talking about that vision. Today, just a few short years later, we've got over 700,000 distributors now in 33 countries worldwide, and again ranked as one of the fastest growing companies in the world. But now people say, well, we believed in you right from the we knew you could do it, but that's not really how the journey went, right? But it's all about, I think, just keep the focus and make sure that you have a clear plan laid out for where you're going, how and when. You don't have to know how you're going to get there, and you don't have to know when you're going to get there. You just have to know you're going to get there.
If I can just add one thing to that, I think having the vision before you have the followers is really important. And I think you kind of alluded to that. You started talking about the vision before you had a lot of people. You know, I find a lot of people go, well, I don't really have to spend a lot of time creating my vision because I don't have anybody to communicate that to. And that's too late then. You want to start to create your vision and communicate it before you have a whole lot of people following you, because they'll make it up as they go if they don't have a plan to follow. And I think you got to start the process early on.
That's absolutely true. And Napoleon Hill and Think and Grow Rich has it initially in the first pages of the book. Get your plan in order, the 6 steps to riches. And I think that's exactly what you're talking about. I remember when we were opening the Napoleon Hill Center. We didn't have an exact name for the center at Purdue. And the vice chancellor encouraged me. He says, well, what are you going to call it? And I said, well, Napoleon Hill Learning Center. And he says, well, is it just for our local community? I said, oh, no, we want to do an outreach, other areas. And then he says, well, where do you want to go? And then we talked nationally. And he says, well, you only want it to be a national organization? He says, how about international? And so the dream just kept going. And that 3, 5, 7-year-old, you study and read and apply the information. And in 3 years, you're known in your community. 5 years, you're known nationally. 7 years, you're an international person, and that happened quicker here than I could have ever imagined. I've heard Shane talk too and stand up in front of audiences that weren't so large, and then they metamorphosized into thousands. It's amazing how that happens, and you look and you just kind of shake your head and say, well, I guess that's cosmic habit force in action. Mm-hmm. It's amazing.
Yeah, one of the things, Phil, that's really a metaphor or a way that I use to explain it, because cosmic habit force, although it's the last principle, probably for me was one of the most difficult to kind of grasp. But one of the things is that people, sometimes they spend way too much time focusing on where they are right now, who they are right now. And who they are right now or where they are right now is really, they're talking about who they were in the past. And I think a simple way to look at it is, instead of looking at your feet and keep on talking about where you are and looking at your feet, you got to look up sometimes. You got to keep your chin up and look out as far as you can and describe what you're looking at, and then take that step and develop a habit of doing that over and over, of looking out to where you want to go. even when there's nothing there. And we're applying all kinds of different rules, and I think that's why this particular principle ties all of the principles together.
Tremendous. Is it important to do a self-inventory in order to clean out maybe the negative habits before moving and planting the seeds of positive habits?
That's a great question. Have you ever been to a shopping mall? We've all been to shopping malls. And one of the most important parts when you walk into a shopping mall, especially if it's a major one, when you haven't been there before, is to find the map. And the most important part of that map is the one that says, you are here. There's a little symbol that says, you are here. And so although it's important to know, and there's your inventory, you got to know where you are. That's true. But more important, you can't spend too much time talking about where you are and, okay, we're here, without taking that step. Although it's important to take that inventory, I think more importantly is to get on to, okay, where are we going? What store are we going? What floor is it on? And let's find the route and the fastest way to get to that route. And what I find is that a lot of, again, because I'm sure everyone on the phone here deals with a lot of people, and sometimes they've developed a bad habit of just looking at the sign that says, you are here, you are here, you are here, you are here. And it's like spending the whole day in front of that map just looking at where you are instead of looking at where they want to go and finding the route to get there.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with that more. I find that if people focus on their weaknesses, they become an expert on their weaknesses and not on the solutions.
Yeah.
And so what you need to do is to really focus on where you want to go as much or more than where you are. Your metaphor is a good one. Where am I now? It's good to know that, but if you obsess or focus too much on that, then you just become an expert on where you've been and not on where you want to go.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's very true.
It's so interesting how all the other principles seem to just get funneled into this final principle of cosmic habit force, such as self-discipline, going the extra mile. Judy, what lessons really resonate with you in terms of the coherency between cosmic habit force and the other principles?
You know, I like that metaphor of the sailing ship, the tall sailing ship with the sails that are marked with each of the principles. And Napoleon Hill uses that as a visual aid, or at least he did when he was teaching the classes himself, to show that if your sails are filled with your winds of enthusiasm, then you will reach your destination in a quicker way than if you don't even put your sails up. And I think that each of the little tidbits that he gives us in all of the other 16 principles are lessons that enable us to manufacture those habits that are good habits versus bad habits to get us to our destination of choice in a quicker way. No one can tell us where individually we want to go. We have to make that decision. But once that decision's made, it's our fault if we don't take that initial personalized action to get ourselves to put one foot in front of the other. Shane's exactly right when he says you're standing in front of a map and you're looking at something and you're not moving, you're pretty much lost in the realm of not making a decision. And by not making a decision, you absolutely are making a decision. You're deciding not to decide, and so you're gaining no ground in that way. And once we enable people to kind of comprehend that and look at what happens when they do take a step to make a decision, either a good or a bad one, and then see the consequences, because it truly is all cause and effect, they can begin to relate the principles to themselves and say, well, I have self-discipline, I do have a pleasing personality, I do hold faith, and they can begin to use some of those characteristics and look at improving themselves individually so they can produce the outcome that they want in their life. And I think that's all part and parcel to the whole, and I think Napoleon Hill was absolutely brilliant with holding cosmic habit force until the very end, because it's like the laws of the universe, and it gets to be a biblical thing almost, because when we look at it, we do realize that we didn't put ourselves here. Some power far greater than we are has orchestrated this whole thing, and we're a player in this universe. So once we recognize our part, then we can get on with what we find that we can do.
Yeah, it's so interesting to look back at those principles and cultivate habits in it, whether it's asking our questions, am I habitually going the extra mile? Am I habitually thinking positive? Am I habitually using self-discipline or applied faith, or habitually being engaged in a mastermind group or a referral organization, you know? And that's a real roadmap. Ivan, you talked about cultivating a plan and a system. For the person that says, where and how do I begin, what kind of advice could you give them?
Well, first, write everything down that's working, which is what I did with BNI. I wrote everything down that I was doing that seemed to be successful, and then improve on it as I went to constantly tweak and add to and develop what started as a basically 5-page manual is now a 900-page manual, and it happened because I have written everything down, and then as I train people, they wrote everything down, and you create a turnkey approach to operating a business that works well.
Wow. And Shane, would you like to add to that in terms of giving your insights on how to create a plan, an action plan for winning habits?
Yeah, I like to keep things real simple. And so if it's complicated, I'm not doing it, number one. And if it's complicated, I can't teach it. If I can't do it, I'm not teaching it, and it's not going to duplicate. And I think if you want to grow a larger organization, you have to find something simple enough that most people can do. And so the strategy that I used is I just figured out, very similar to Ivan, step by step, what are the steps that are actually working for me? How do I take the smallest step just to generate some income? Because we teach people how to generate income and how to grow a business. And so how do we make that income? Does it work? And so we took a magnifying glass and broke it down and kept on breaking it down to the simplest things, from the questions to ask to the steps to take. Real simple, okay? So the philosophy basically is this. You learn how to generate $1, then you can generate $10, and then you can generate $100. But if you don't know how to make the dollar, it's going to be hard to make $100,000 or $10,000 or $1 million, right? But if you can figure out how to make $1, then you can get good at it, and you get good at it, and you can start teaching other people what is causing your success. And so that's kind of that system that Ivan talks about. It's mandatory to have a system, something that's consistent. Like McDonald's, for example, has a system. They don't put the fries on the right-hand side, they put them on the left-hand side, and they do things in a very, very specific way because they've created a success system around that, and one of the most successful franchises in history. Same thing. It's the same thing. What the commonality is they have a specific system. This is how we do it here, and this is how it works, and you just break it down step by step until you've got the whole thing refined, and you keep on tweaking it. Never major changes, always small increments, make it better and better and better as you go. So there's small enhancements to the system. We're never looking for a major overhaul, just little tweaks here and there to make it even better.
That is tremendous insight. And if there was one key to unlocking Habitforce, I'm sure there's more than one key, probably 16 keys. Napoleon Hill refers back to self-discipline. Would you say, Judy, that was one of the major keys, and how can someone begin cultivating and nurturing that principle?
I think it is, and it's one that people often do not like to look at, because the hardest person to discipline is yourself. I was thinking tonight, here we all are in the evening, everybody else is at home, and we're staying late and we're doing the interviews because it's important to us to share this information. That's self-discipline. There are other things that many people choose to do, but it isn't in their best interest, and they kind of create their own havoc, their ugliness in their life, because they make the wrong choices. We see it every single day. Here at the university, we see students not going to class, not having assignments, not making a commitment to fulfill the syllabus of the class because they just don't feel like it. Or they're not watching the videos if they're doing an online class, or it's something. But those are all choices, and that involves self-discipline. And Napoleon Hill said this himself. He said when he followed his own plan, he was successful. And when he didn't follow his plan, he wasn't successful. So he tried it out on himself, and it worked for him. But how do you cultivate self-discipline? I think it's mind over matter. And one of the things that I like to use is I like to use auto-suggestion. I'm a big fan of Emile Coué, and I like to read the techniques that he's delivered to people to kind of reinforce the habits that they want to see manifested in their life. And I think these self-affirmations, the auto-suggestions, and the desire to repeat something. I have to say what Shane always says. He says, it's easy, it's simple, it's coffee. I mean, I can hear it in my sleep. I've attended enough of the meetings to pick that up. And Napoleon Hill, he has the catchphrases too, and they become almost biblical in proportion to how the people use them. For example, in every adversity, there's a see to an equal or greater benefit. What the mind of man can conceive and believe, the mind of man can achieve. And you hear those and you say those to yourself, and you have to admit they're correct. You have to admit that. And once you make that admission, if you're truly interested in self-advancement, you're going to have to make the right choice then. And so I think by cultivating good thoughts, you cultivate good actions, and that creates good outcomes.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. And Ivan, you've observed the really successful people in your organization. What habits have they embraced that really have set them aside from the rest?
Yeah, you started the conversation with what's the one secret, and my answer to that generally is that the one secret to success is that there is no one secret. There's really many different things, and one of the things that we've been talking about is having a simple plan, a simple strategy, and I think what's important to differentiate here is really the difference between simple and easy. I think that what we are talking about, it's got to be reasonably simple. When I say there's a 900-page manual, it's a reasonably simple manual. I mean, it's a step-by-step, do this, do that. However, it's not easy. If it were easy, everyone would do it, and they don't. A lot of the things that get people to a point of success, it takes hard work. Hard work and, as Judy mentioned, good choices. You got to do both, and don't confuse simple with easy. A lot of the secrets to success are pretty straightforward, but they're rarely easy because the implementation of them takes hard work.
Yeah, very good. Very good analysis.
I agree on that point between easy and simple. It has to be a simple. The concept, in my opinion, has to be simple. And so if it's simple, it's easy. But if it's easy, it's also easy not to do. If it's easy to do, it's easy not to do. And that's where the problem lies, is that it's easy not to do. And so anytime there's a step that you actually have to take the step or it doesn't get done, that's work. And work is not always easy. So the steps have to be easy, but the work has to be there all the time. So it's work, believe, and then you get paid. You can't get those mixed up. But on that note, for me, with that, it's always been what I found in just teaching and working with people and mentoring people is that most of the people, when they start, they have no idea what they really want. They just have never thought of it. They really don't know. If you ask someone, okay, what do you really want? What is it that you really want? And most have never really given a lot of thought. They know what they don't want, okay? They know exactly what they don't want, but they don't really know it with clarity. And so having that definiteness of purpose, and I like to have fun with definiteness of purpose in that I want to break it down and maybe have a definiteness of purpose for the day. Have a definiteness of purpose for the week or the month. Have a major definiteness of purpose for your life. But get that habit going of having a definiteness of purpose of what you want to accomplish during the day, what you want to accomplish during the week, what you want to accomplish during the month and the year, and develop that habit.
You know what Shane's saying? I like the analogy of thinking about your actions in your life as maybe little pearls that you do one at a time. Maybe those pearls are the items on your to-do list. You have 10 or 20 things a day, and you get some good vibes by crossing them off. But unless you string those pearls together with some type of a chain or a cord, you're never going to have that beautiful, worthy necklace to wear because you have to have that application of the cord, the chain, to hold all those pearls of your actions together to formulate that consistency in that thought. I was recently at a friend's new home, and there was a sign in the lobby pointing in a direction. You know, one said cafeteria, one said chapel, and this and that. And one said mission integration. And that one caught my attention. I said, oh, my goodness, could you imagine going to a place that you're going to integrate your mission? And just think what great things could be done there if people had all their little pearls in a row and they were able to assemble them into whatever it is they wanted to achieve and then wear that lovely outcome. That's true mission integration. And I think that's the revelation that we get with Cosmic Habitforce, because once we figure it out, we don't have to go back and think about it anymore. We know how it works, and that's the beauty in it.
What are the foundational habits? Are there bread and butter habits that just cannot be ignored? For instance, physical habits, exercise habits, eating habits, thinking habits, reading habits. Would there be some fundamentals that you would suggest as being foundational?
In my opinion, I would go with the habit of going the extra mile. The habit of doing more than you're paid to do. And I think that everyone can relate to any time they've received maybe more income than they expected. It was always because what came before that was that they did more than what the next person was willing to do. They took that extra step. They made that extra phone call. They attended the extra meeting. They stayed a little bit later. And I just can't overemphasize that in today's culture, in today's society, I'm sure it must have been the same back 50 or 60 or even 100 years ago, but some people are just going to go develop the habit of going the extra mile, of doing more than they're paid to do. But what always happens, and most often happens, is that all of a sudden they're paid a lot more for doing the same type of work. To me, that's one of the basic things that if someone's going to develop a habit, I'd like to have people develop that habit early on, the habit of going the extra mile.
I think it's the habit, going along with what she said, Shane, of being of service. Many people look at this thing called the law of attraction. They say, oh, what's in it for me? What am I going to get out of it? Instead of having that attitude of gratitude that the people talk about, it's nice to be grateful when you're on the receiving end, but what about the giving end? The real spontaneity and the real beauty in being a human being is being of service to somebody else. And however you're going to do that, by sharing a meal, by sharing a lesson, by sharing time, and just giving of yourself. And to me, that goes along with going the extra mile. But you have to understand that it's just not, how is that going to come back to me and enrich my life? It will, but it may not happen spontaneously, and it may not happen the next day or the next hour. It may take years to come back around. But I think it's important to be of service.
Yeah.
Well, I agree with that. And from a networking perspective, that's particularly important. And we teach philosophy in B&I called Giver's Gain. If you want to get referrals, if you want to get business, you have to be willing to give. You have to be willing to contribute. And I'm not a real new agey kind of guy, but that works. What ends up happening is that the sum of the whole becomes greater than the individual parts, that by people working together and helping one another, you end up generating a whole lot more business and a whole lot more work together than if you were trying to do it individually. And I see that work every single day.
Mm-hmm. Tremendous. Yeah, your whole organization has been built on that premise, hasn't it, Ivan? Just as Shane's and also the foundation. It's interesting, too, just the habit of thinking positively and the habit of not complaining. I think there's a whole organization by Will Bowen that was established on the no complaint world, or I think he wrote that book. But how important is it to create habitual positive thoughts and keeping that negativity away?
Well, in my opinion, if a listener is looking to achieve more, to have more, to be more, to do more, they've got a big goal. They have a big definiteness of purpose. If they have something that's really worthwhile, there is zero room for negativity. Zero. There's not an ounce of room for negativity. Not if you want to achieve your goals. Not if you want to get somewhere. If you want to get something accomplished, you cannot allow negativity to creep in there, because it will. It's almost like the grass with the weeds coming out, right? You get one coming out, you got to take care of that right away. So in my opinion, I believe that anything worthwhile, if you're going for it, you have to make up your mind and make a decision that there's zero room for negativity. Of course, there's going to be negative things that are going to happen, but you can't spend and you can't invest time in negativity.
I agree with Shane completely, and if you're listening to this and you don't buy it and you don't believe it, then let me give you another way to look at it. It doesn't do any good to complain to people about whatever, your business, your life. Why? Because half the people you tell don't care, and the other half are glad you're worse off than they are. So why do it?
Amen. Yeah, so true. So true. And really, when you look at all the principles, they all really point to creating habits in your life, whether it be budgeting time and money or enthusiasm or sound health and so forth. How long does it take to create a habit that sticks? Is there a magic number? Some people say 21, 28 days. Did you combine that with the intensity or repetition? Any thoughts on that?
Well, the common statements about habits are that it takes 30 days, 21 days, and that time frame of making a conscious effort to change the habit before it becomes something that's automatic, something that you do by rote. It's like getting up in the morning. I'm an early riser, but I like to go to bed early, too. I'm up most days by 4:30, if not earlier. I use my email. I work at that time because we deal with a lot of international people, and, of course, the time's different on the other side of the world, so I can actually converse with them on email. And it has become a very positive habit for me because I wake up and I look forward to it. I'm going to talk to somebody such and so today, Christina in Malaysia or Mr. Harai in Japan or somebody, and it creates that enthusiasm. You're wide awake before you know it, that first cup of coffee. Mm-hmm. And I think those habits are something that we can train ourselves to develop, and they're important. They're important. The habits that personify who we are habits that we're known by. I have to tell a little story. One of my assistants is Chinese, and he's back in China right now. He left a couple days ago to get his visa renewed. And when he came here as a student in the master's program, he didn't speak hardly any English. He wasn't very self-assured. He was a newcomer. And yet he wanted to work for the foundation. And I said, no, it wasn't going to work. We needed somebody that could do this and that. And he looked at me, and the only thing he said was, if it can be done, I can do it. I mean, it's such a look, and I thought, well, how can I deny that opportunity? And now Alan's been here 6 years, and he lives up to what he said he would do, too. And so sometimes we have to suspend our disbelief and say, maybe I don't know exactly what's right. Maybe there's a higher power out there that does know what's right for me and puts me in the path of something that I should embrace. And that part of cosmic habit force we haven't talked about, but I think that there's more than a mechanism in the universe. There's an almighty presence, a power that creates opportunities for us and puts us in that path to perfection, because that's the ultimate goal, I think, to return to the source as perfect as it is. And when we think about it that way, we become more than just a clog in a wheel type thing. But I'd like to hear your interest in that, Shane and Ivan.
Back to the habit again, because you just almost had a little bit of flashback, because when I was learning about developing habits, I asked myself the same question: how long would it take to develop a habit? And so I looked at all kinds of different things. Little fun things that I would do is, for example, in the morning, if I was going to shave, instead of starting on the right or the left-hand side, I would switch. And to see how long it would take me to develop the habit of, instead of doing it one way, doing it the other way. And what I found was that the habit became a habit when it got comfortable. Because at first, if you're doing something, for example, let's use shaving as an example. Whatever someone shaves, and they're going to shave one side of their face, I think, before the other side. And what you do is you make a decision, you're going to switch. You're going to change that habit and switch over to the other side. Well, in the beginning, it's really uncomfortable. And so like with any habit, in the beginning, it gets really uncomfortable, but then all of a sudden, over time, and sometimes it takes 21 days, sometimes it takes 30 days, sometimes you have to say, I'm going to do it until, it gets comfortable. You can apply that to making cold calls if someone's in sales, or you can apply that to meeting new people. You can apply it to anything, but I just did it on so many different things. And I would say the answer to that question is it could take a little bit longer, it could take a little bit less, but when it gets more comfortable, then you've developed that habit.
That's great. I've heard of switch batters, but never switch shavers.
Yeah. Well, you could probably do it with pretty well anything, but that's how I started to learn a little bit more about developing different habits and how long would it take to get into that habit. But what happens over time, for example, the habit of thinking positively, of feeling good, the habit of making a decision that you're going to feel good now, all of a sudden what happens in the beginning again, it's uncomfortable. It gets uncomfortable, but all of a sudden what you notice is that it's uncomfortable not to have it that way. So when you have someone that's a very positive thinker, because they've habitually, over a long period of time, they're thinking positive, you put that person in a negative environment, they don't do too well. They're not comfortable anymore. And that's the type of thing that we find they want to get out of that energy, out of that vibration as fast as possible because it's too uncomfortable. Now, you can also take a negative thinker, someone who's always negative, always complaining, always talking negative, always talking about the past and the negative stuff and the hard feelings, and you put them in a positive energy, they don't do too well either. And some of people, they just don't do well in that kind of environment because it's way too uncomfortable in the beginning.
That is terrific insight. And believe it or not, we are coming to the end of our discussion. But it's been a wonderful time together. And perhaps we can close off by asking this question. If there was one takeaway that you can impart to our listeners that they can apply today in light of Cosmic Habit Force, what would that be? And with that, could you please let our listeners know where they can find out more about your organization and the products and the services that you offer? And perhaps, Ivan, we can start with you.
Sure. I think one of the things that I like to share with people is that success is really about the uncommon application of common knowledge. There are no big secrets. I've been interviewing people for dozens of years and asking them what their secret to success is. And all these years, I've never heard anyone say anything to me that made me go, oh, my goodness, that's the secret? I had no idea. Nobody ever told me that was the secret. It's there. And Napoleon Hill, as you said in my intro, he was way ahead of his time. I mean, he was talking about things that are universal truths and are applicable still today. And it's there. The key is the uncommon application of this common knowledge. It's applying it in a way that works, in something creative, possibly something new, but it's taking these ideas and applying them consistently. That's what it takes, I believe, to be successful.
Consistent application and repetition. That's great. Now, Ivan, there's a couple of sites we can visit you at. Could you tell us where we can learn more about your speaking engagements, your products, your books, and BNI?
Sure. Well, BNI is pretty straightforward, bni.com. We have, like I said, 6,000 groups in 50 countries around the world, bni.com. There's a lot of free content up on my blog, businessnetworking.com, and associated with that is my personal site, ivanmeisner.com, if people are looking to bring me in to speak.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much, Ivan, for taking time out of your busy schedule, going the extra mile to serve the Napoleon Hill Foundation and all of us, and bless us with your insights. And Shane, maybe we can go to you.
Sure. Well, the simplest way I can put this is that I'm sure the listeners are looking to improve, to get better. They're looking to maybe provide a better future for their family. And so these are some of the common things, maybe to be healthier. But what I found is that success is not an accident. People who achieve any type of success, they're usually doing certain things over and over and over and over. And if we're intelligent and we just pay attention, so what I would recommend is that the takeaway would be to find someone that has what you want. If you have a definiteness of purpose, find someone that's already done that, has already been there, and get a hold of them. And if you ask them, they'll tell you. They'll tell you step by step what they're doing. And so it's not an accident. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. Find someone, whether it's your health or relationships or a career or a certain amount of money in the bank or whatever it is, and just model that person. And that, to me, is the simplest way and the shortest way to get there. Of course, it's going to take hard work, because you'll notice that people who have achieved, they're not going to say, well, you know, I won the lottery last week and that's how I became a millionaire. They're not usually going to do that. And lastly, Organo Gold International is the name of the company. We're the healthier coffee company, and we actually make coffee that makes people feel good. How they can get a hold of me, they can go to our blog at evictorynews.com, or just go to shanemorand.com, and it'll go to the Facebook, and you can learn a little bit more about Organo Gold.
Tremendous insight. And Shane, thank you. We know how busy your schedule is for coming and imparting your insights. And I believe it's 7:15 Eastern Time, and talk about demonstrating going the extra mile. You sure have. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hey, Judy, take us home.
Well, the idea of practicing the habit of giving yourself away is the takeaway that I'd like to leave with the audience, because I think that true success is not about simply receiving, it's about giving back. And when we look at all Napoleon Hill's practices and principles and philosophy of success, and when what he came away with was that in the end, his later books, Grow Rich with Peace of Mind, You Can Work Your Own Miracles, all of those types of things, where he found that by doing beyond what you think you're capable of doing in the idea of benefiting others is where life has its significance. And I think both of these gentlemen that are with us today do that, and that's why they are so successful, because I know Shane personally, and Ivan, just listening to you, I can tell that you have all those characteristics, and Phil, you too. This project has been a labor of love for you to get through the 17 principles with the speakers, and we talked about this early on when it was just an idea that you were forming. And now you've completed the series, and you're going to assess all the knowledge that has come from all the 51 interviews that you've held. And I think we'll glean many, many ideas, many pieces of wisdom that will help put the Napoleon Hill puzzle together for many people. But what we do at the World Learning Center is we have seminars, workshops, training classes, et cetera, and you can access this material by going to our website, which is www.naphill.org. And our classes are a series of trainings that anybody can take. And you can read the books, too. They don't have to take the classes. But we offer that, and then weekly I do an electronic e-zine. It's called Napoleon Hill Yesterday and Today for tomorrow, and that's free of charge. We send that out every week, and it's kind of the way that I have an opportunity to teach a lesson to our 50,000 subscribers that read that thing. And so we'd like to invite people to learn a little bit about Napoleon Hill by doing those two things, going to our website and subscribing to our e-zine.
Tremendous. Judy, thank you so much. Again, going the extra mile, you're working late just to be able to impart your knowledge and your gifts to the world. And Napoleon Hill Foundation is certainly fulfilling its mission in a tremendous, tremendous way because of you and Don and so many of your team members. Well, that covers the 17 lessons of success and lesson 17 of Cosmic Habit Force. If I may throw in my 2 cents worth. I believe there's a saying that says, watch your thoughts because they become your actions. Watch your actions because they become your habits, and watch your habits because they become your destiny. Ivan, Judy, Shane, thank you so much for coming on to this program. It's been a real blessing having you on.
Thanks, Phil.
Thank you, Phil.